everyone, this is Callimara here, and no, it's not calamari. Welcome back to my channel, or if you want to join the pond, go ahead and take a dive. You might like it here. So, it's been a while since my last Winx redesign, mostly because I got distracted by other topics I wanted to cover, but I always knew I would come back to do more. And what better time to do a Winx Club redesign than with the announcement of a new 3D reboot? Now, you guys know that I was not the biggest fan of the 3D animation they would do for the original run of Winx Club. Granted, the technology was limited, their budget was limited, and they were just scrambling to stay afloat and were desperate to pull in new audiences, so I can forgive them for looking like this. If you like this version of Winx Club though, good for you, but I can't stand behind that opinion. And now, I can honestly say that the teaser and leaks of the character models and animation look really promising. Like, it is Miraculous Ladybug the movie level quality for a series. I think Bloom looks amazing, the fashion looks so good, and yeah, Bloom's outfit isn't stylish, but it is true to Bloom's personality in Season 1, which, lest people forget, Bloom was the weird girl who believed fairies were real in high school and had a rabbit comfort animal she brought around everywhere. I'm sure her fashion choices will improve once she meets Stella. And I'm honestly really excited to see more. Because if they could make Mitzi look this good and convert me to a Mitzi stan, I'm super excited to see how they do everyone else. I just hope they can maintain this level of quality throughout the show's run, because I don't know how big of an ask that is for them. And yeah, there's some allegations floating around that they used AI in some of the leaked character concepts, but my stance on it is this. It's still all alleged, we don't have concrete evidence, but also AI is a tool. If it is used by artists to help them come up with ideas or concepts or cuts out mundane tasks like rigging or selecting areas to color so they can work faster, it's great, I love it. What I don't like is when it is used to hurt artists by stealing their work and work opportunities. So yeah, as long as the AI is used to help artists do their job and it doesn't get used as a final product, which is the equivalent of turning in a Pinterest idea board as a finished art project, it's fine. But again, it's all just speculation and nothing is confirmed, so let's put away our pitchforks and torches for now. Strangely enough, I'm also really excited to see what they would change, because it still seems true to the series and not as far as a departure as Fate Winx Saga. Because unlike some kids' media I grew up with, Winx Club definitely had the most holes and inconsistencies in their story and character writing, so I'm really hoping that they use this reboot as an opportunity to improve upon those shortcomings. Though to be honest, I also don't remember or know the story well enough that even if they did change a minor detail, I probably wouldn't clock it. Obviously, Fate Winx Saga was just an entirely new story, so that one I definitely noticed the changes of, because maybe it was just me, but as a kid, I watched Winx Club for the pretty visuals, and the pretty visuals are still here, and at least it's still animated, so I don't know, I'm fine with this. But getting back on topic, today we are designing a look for my personal favorite character in all of Winx Club, Flora. And hey, if you like fashion and sparkles and dressing up characters in super fabulous outfits, you'll definitely love the sponsor of this video, Life Makeover. Life Makeover is a limitless dress-up and social sim game with thousands of gorgeous outfits and so many different styles that you can mix and match. In this game, you can create and fully customize your very own avatar, design your own one-of-a-kind clothing, build your dream house, and chill with your friends, just like in Winx Club. And now, for their first anniversary, Life Makeover is launching a new pet system where you can adopt and fully customize your very own pets. Choose from over 50 adjustable parts from fur to facial features, 4 optional personalities, and customize even small details such as pet bells and paws. Your pet will come live at your house where you can care for it and even use voice or text commands to make them sit, shake hands, and make various cute reactions. For their first anniversary, Life Makeover is also giving away a free 6-star clothing Deity Dream. I've spoken about Life Makeover on this channel before, and since then, I have been an avid player, so I'm excited to announce their brand new version, Sandtrek, which is coming online for a limited time from May 1st to May 21st. It comes with new 5-star clothing, Stack 1, and Sand Storyteller, which are all waiting for you. If you love playing The Sims, pet simulation games, fashion games, or visual novel games, Life Makeover was literally made for you. Click the link in my description to download Life Makeover today! So Flora is one of the main members of the Winx Club, and as previously established, my personal favorite growing up because she was the pink one and in my opinion was just the most beautiful one of the group. I loved her fashion sense. I mean, you gotta be honest, Flora walked so TikTok girls could run. I loved her personality, I loved her themes and motifs, and I thought it was really cool that, unlike the other members of the Winx Club, Flora wasn't royalty. She wasn't born into any kind of privilege. She was just a regular girl who studied really hard and did really well at school. Also, I just realized that I'm covering the Winx Club members based on their introduction order in the show, which was completely unintentional, but I'll embrace it. Flora is the fairy of nature and the current guardian fairy of her home planet, Linfia. She is also the Winx Club's potion master, who is capable of brewing any kind of medicinal remedy using her magical plants. But potions aren't the only thing she's good at, because Flora was one of the most diligent students at the Elfia College for Fairies, and during her time there, she was even a straight A student. I know a lot of people headcanon Flora as Latina, but I think she also looks pretty Southeast Asian, and part of the reason for that was obviously because of her tan skin, but that she also had the same narrow eye shape as Musa, who is undoubtedly East Asian coded. And also the fact that, as mentioned before, she's got that Asian academic diligence shared by none other than Musa herself. But honestly, Latinas and Southeast Asians look a lot alike, to the point you'd get mistaken for the other, so we could probably share her. She can be both. Though this makes it especially disappointing when in the later seasons with the art direction changes that they completely got rid of the girls' unique features, including Musa and Flora's eyes, in favor of a more stock standard uniform look across all the girls. Like, they really made them look even more like copy-pastes of each other with different hair colors, eyes, and skin. And that's not even mentioning the whitewashing they did to Flora and Aisha in the later seasons. But personality-wise, Flora is a very calm, soft-spoken, caring, sweet, shy, and genuine girl who loves plants and vegetation of all kinds. Because of her gentle and caring personality, Flora is strongly connected to nature and loves helping people. She has a strong maternal instinct, especially towards her friends and family, making her more or less the mom of the Winx Club. However, this does mean that she often puts other people before herself, making it hard for her to speak her thoughts and feelings. She also struggles with a lack of self-confidence, which means she often doubts herself and her powers. This does make her pretty weak in battles, and I do blame a lot of that on the writers just never letting her have her moment to shine. Even though Igneo Straffi, the creator of Winx Club himself, has said that Flora is actually the second most powerful Winx girl behind only Bloom. And we'll discuss this a bit more in depth later on in the power segment, so don't worry. Aside from that, she's also the most mature member of the Winx Club, and it was such a nice change to have a character with a good head on her shoulders to balance the impulsiveness and childishness of the rest of the cast. And fun fact, she was also the main inspiration for my character Kirana from my series Wildward. Go check that out if you haven't already. I could talk your ear off about why Flora is the best girl in all of Winx Club and how the writers absolutely wasted her potential, and I absolutely will, in due time. For now, let's talk about the design I want to do for Flora. In case you didn't know, in my Winx redesigns, I'm drawing them in my own original fairy form that I called Callimarax because I thought it was funny. But then after a while, it got kind of old, so it's called Legendarix now. As a refresher, the aesthetic of this form is inspired by Greek nymphs and the feeling of divine ethereal beauty, so I'm looking at ancient Greece-inspired clothes or styles that look ethereal and whimsical. Classical fairy vibes as opposed to Well, pre-rebrand JoJo Siwa. Boo me all you want, but Enchantix was peak and it was all downhill from there. And yes, that does include Believix. Hot take, but you can't change my mind. I am an original 3-season run purist, okay? Everything after Secret of the Lost Kingdom is non-canon to me because Nickelodeon got its grubby little Dan Schneider-stained hands on it thinking they could do better without understanding what made the original series good in the first place. So starting with her hair, Flora to me always looked best with it down and flowing, and obviously it's mandatory for her to have flowers braided into her hair. For the sake of my own sanity though, I will be adding these later on once I have the basic shapes nailed down. But my plan is that I'll be drawing inspiration from Balinese traditional hairstyles because I love incorporating my culture into my designs where I can, which decorates the woman's hair with flowers in their adat or traditional wear. But for now, I'm just focusing on the shape and silhouette of Flora's hair. I wanted it to look sleek and flowy and elegant, but also soft and romantic, so I knew I had to incorporate some loose curls at the ends to really give it that vibe. When I started designing the dress, I ended up getting the sudden urge to change up the pose because I felt that it was too similar to what I had done for Stella, and it didn't really feel like Flora. I wanted to do a pose that captured her soothing, mature energy, so I played around with her leg to have them both extended for a nice silhouette, and to switch things up, I tried several different arm and hand positions that came to mind when I think about Flora. And I do think about Flora a lot. I eventually settled on this pose that looks like Flora is blowing a kiss to the audience because I think it shows off her romantic, graceful side, as well as her shy side because she's looking away from the person she's blowing a kiss to. For her dress, I found this gorgeous one with vines wrapped around it on Pinterest, and I instantly knew it would be the perfect dress for Flora. My overall goal for her dress was to make it look like she was wearing a giant rose, because Flora's main motif is a pink rose, and it was a large component of her original Magic Winx transformation and her Enchantix transformation. I think they probably tried to make her dress resemble a rose, but they never fully committed. Personally, I think Flora would absolutely kill it in Rosetta's dress, or heck, even Elena's dress from Barbie Fairytopia, and that's the kind of feeling that I want to capture with Flora's dress here. Something that absolutely screams garden fairy. My first thought was to achieve a petal-like shape with the layering of her dress, making each layer a petal in the flower that is the overall dress. However, after my experience designing dresses for Bloom and Stella, I'm much more conscious now of negative space and silhouette because I feel that I failed to do so properly in my previous redesigns. So I'm being very conscious in creating a shape that is easier to follow, while still being complex and visually appealing, but not so much so that you have absolutely no idea what's going on. I know the sketch is looking very busy right now, but I'm hoping that once I clean everything up and get to the lining stage, it'll all magically work out. And once I was happy with the outfit, we finally get to the fun part, the wings. Of course, my idea first and foremost was to also fashion her wings after rose petals because I have dreamed of a Flora design with rose petal wings since I was a child, and immediately what came to mind for her wings were Elena's wings from Barbie Mermaidia. Both the starting wings and the ending wings because I loved how both of them made me think of roses. I created the basic outline of her wings and I decided to do a butterfly shape, and I knew I wanted to do a layered effect to make it look like a blossom, and one of the ways I did this was by adding a sepal or sepal. I'm not sure how it's pronounced in English, but it's this part of a flower, also known as the protective leaf, to make it really look like her wings are blooming from her back. I tinkered with several patterns and shapes until I thought about actually adding another pair of smaller wings to overlap the bigger ones, technically giving her 8 wings in total, since the forewing and hindwing are 2 separate parts on each side, and this was exactly the look I was going for. I did want to add a bit of a fold to the tips of her wings to make them look more reminiscent of rose petals while still being conscious of how the overall silhouette looked. I settled on a bit of an accent for when I color in later on, which I think is a nice compromise between a butterfly wing pattern and a flower. I added some more lines to imply waves and folds in her wings, which I think really makes it more reminiscent of a petal as opposed to an insect wing as well. I was a bit conflicted though, because on one hand, I was worried her wings looked too plain compared to Bloom and Stella's wings, but on the other, I also didn't want to over-detail it to the point where it completely drowns out the details that were on her dress. See, my biggest regret from my previous designs for Stella and Bloom were making them too busy. I had a lot going on for their dresses and their wings, and it all just ended up looking like a messy cluster, and your eyes aren't really sure where to look. And I know that's pretty much the point of hyper-feminine media, to just make things super decorative and frilly and sparkly and pretty to catch the attention of young girls right away. But I am a grown woman now, and what I want is a nice, balanced design. And to have a nice, balanced design, you need to show restraint where appropriate. So because I kind of went all out for the details on Flora's hair and dress, which still need the flowers and vines to be added later on, as well as the connecting sash, which I am currently adding because it's a common feature across the Legendarix designs I've done so far, I know that I need to show restraint for her wings and keep it relatively simple. I adjusted the position of the train of Flora's gown to better follow her line of movement, and so that it doesn't completely block out the bottom half. This also allows the length of her hair to peek through, where otherwise it would have been sitting behind the gown and not visible to the audience. And now comes my favorite part of the sketching process, cleaning up. I'm someone who draws my sketches on different layers, then once I'm happy with the separate components, I clean up the overlap and merge it all down. I know other artists will do things differently. Some don't bother cleaning up their sketches at all, and honestly, all the power to them, but this is how I do it. As for the reason why I do things like this, I think this drawing is a great explanation because having all the layers visible like this is super overwhelming, right? Me personally, I would not be able to properly pick out the correct lines to follow when I'm doing line art, plus it helps me visualize if the clothes and hair I'm putting on the body properly convey the shape and silhouette I wanted once it's erased. Sometimes if I'm not particularly motivated, I'll just start coloring in the cleaned up sketch without even bothering with line art, but for this piece, I will be doing proper line art. Because there are a lot of fine details in this design, I'm being very careful with my line dynamics and particularly with my line thickness. With hyper-detailed designs and patterns, it helps to use thinner lines to help the details appear, because thicker lines tend to swallow them up, and I personally think it makes them look like a messy blob. And speaking about patterns, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, but I am absolutely appalled that despite Flora's flower and nature motif, the Winx designers have never played with the idea of giving her flower-inspired shapes and silhouettes for her wings. I think they do a better job at incorporating petal or leaf-like garments for her clothes. I thought her harmonics dress was particularly excellent at that, but her wings are just severely lacking, if not outright lazy in my opinion. Like, for Believix and Bloomix, they just straight up put flower prints on her wings instead of making her wings be the flower. Like most of Flora as a character, I think that's a huge wasted opportunity. And that's if they incorporate her nature theme into her wings at all. But I guess that's the case for all the Winx anyway. Igneostafi, hire me! I can make you all the individualized outfits and wings you want for your girls. But for this particular form, Legendarix, the idea behind it is that it is a legendary power that only very few fairies can obtain. These fairies are those who have attained their full fairy form, aka Enchantix, and has earned a mark of valor, which are these glowing tattoo things that you can see on Bloom and Stella from each realm in the magic dimension. This mark of valor is a unique tattoo that magically appears and disappears on their skin at whim, and can only be attained by becoming a legend among the realm's inhabitants, usually by an act of great service that will be remembered for the rest of time. Once they have collected these marks, the fairy can then ascend to Legendarix, which grants her the ability to create her own pocket dimension in which she has full control over the space inside. This allows her to manifest anything she wishes, change the terrain and landscape to her desire, slow or speed up the flow of time, store items, and trap creatures inside of it. However, they cannot take something out of the pocket dimension that they manifested inside of it, and only people they have granted permission can enter. This is inspired by the Crystal Gems rooms in Steven Universe and based off the concept of Fairyland, which is essentially the pre-Christian land of the dead. Here, the fairies are at their most powerful as the pocket dimension amplifies their powers. Essentially, Legendarix fairies have become gods, being able to create their own world in which they have full control, where they can invite other people to come inhabit if they so choose, and never let them leave. But that depends on the fairy. And are probably revered as godlike entities in the magic dimension in the first place. So what would Flora's realm look like, and what would her unique spell be for Legendarix? For Flora's realm, I picture lush flower fields and dense forests shrouded in cool mist, calm lakes, serene mountains, and of course, a variety of magical plants and animals. Because one of Flora's abilities is to control the seasons, I think her realm would be something similar to Pixie Hollow, where all 4 seasons exist at the same time, but sectioned into different areas. Because Flora is the fairy of nature, and nature isn't just green fields and forests, Flora would also have different biomes in her realm, like deserts, rainforests, tundras, oceans with underwater worlds, and subterranean cave systems. I think out of all the Winx girls, Flora's pocket dimension is the most expansive, because in case you didn't know, Flora's powers aren't just limited to plants and talking to animals. It's everything in nature, which means Flora can also control the climate, changing the seasons at will. She can also control all 4 elements. That's right, my girl is literally the Avatar, and has been shown to control the earth, creating earthquakes and smashing boulders with her mind, the wind, being capable of summoning powerful breezes, and so it stands to reason that she would likely be able to manipulate fire and water as well. And even beyond that, she can even manipulate biological processes like photosynthesis, healing, growth, and even life and death. Heck, Flora was shown to be able to create sentient life in Season 4 when she gave life to discarded toys and turned them into fairy pets, which was the entire premise for the Winx's efforts to bring magic back to Earth, by the way. And speaking of Season 4, oh my god, the wasted potential there. It really could have been Flora's season, but they just threw it away. But anyway, this is why Igneostafi himself has said that power-wise, Flora is the second strongest Winx behind only Bloom herself. Does that mean she would body Aisha or Stella in a fight? Well, no. Because while her powers have the most potential to dominate in combat, Flora doesn't like fighting and rarely uses her full power. Flora, much like Helia, is a pacifist. She's compassionate and empathetic, so she prefers to use her powers defensively or as support, rather than offensively. Plus, she has also invested more of her time into learning potion making and medicine, which is why, as much as I also dislike it, she's pretty much a lightweight in a fight. But I think that's a great character trait for her to have because it helps the Winx members feel more like individuals than carbon copies of each other, and they help to balance each other out. So keeping that in mind for Flora's unique Legendarix spell, because in my ideal Winx universe, we would scale down the power of the Dragon Flame and scale up the power of the other types of magic with their own unique specializations, I think Flora would acquire a sort of reset ability that allows her to return things to its natural state. So it kind of looks like a healing spell, but really it's more like damage reversal and basically restoring order or the natural balance. So if there was a polluted river, Flora can return it to its former pristine state. If there was a person or object that got corrupted by a curse or illness, Flora can reset them back to their states before the curse or illness was acquired. It doesn't actually fix the issue, and it's not a cure-all, but more like a second chance. I think that's what I'll call the spell. Second chance. I think it fits her forgiving and motherly nature as well, since she always makes sure that no one gets left behind and is empathetic to everyone, even people that have wronged her, like Diaspro. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, I think I've held off my rant about Flora's wasted potential for long enough, so let's finally get into it. For your convenience, I will be organizing this yap session into a nice, easy to navigate numbered list. Number 1, Helia. Wow, Callie, way to start a list about Flora with a completely separate character. I know, but this is relevant. And yeah, I'll say it. Her relationship with Helia is the only good, healthy one in the show, and hilariously enough, it was only because the writers just didn't bother with it. They left it alone for 3 whole seasons after they got together at the end of season 2, and did not do anything with them at all until season 5 when they gave them a pointless jealousy plot. But this is a trend for Flora's character in general. She was clearly one of the writer's least favorite characters because in the beginning, she was the only Winx girl without a Red Fountain love interest. And while I also think it was because they just didn't care enough about Flora to give her one for reasons, namely that at the time, she was the only dark-skinned character in the main cast, I also think that was freaking awesome. She was an independent young fairy who focused on her studies and wanted to help the people around her. She didn't need a partner to make her complete, and now in season 2, she's saying she wants a boyfriend despite her never once being shown to be interested in having one in season 1. Damn you, social pressure of being the only single person in your friend group! And they immediately throw in a new guy for her because, well, 2 possibilities. Either they realized Flora was actually rather popular and got pushed back for treating her differently from the rest of the Winx, or they thought, oh no, she stands out too much, we must make her conform. Or heck, it could even be both. But even aside from that, I could not tell you a single Flora-centered storyline outside of the ones intended to set up how she got the obligatory power-up everyone else got, because, as you know, I fell off after season 4, and if it took them 4 whole seasons before they finally paid any attention to Flora, that is honestly on them. But if we're gonna talk about how Flora was wasted as a character, then we need to talk about Helia because I think his existence is one of the direct causes for Flora's wasted potential. See, Flora didn't need a love interest, and I don't think it was necessary to shoehorn one in just for the sake of uniformity. As much as I do love Helia as a character, his introduction into the Red Fountain Knights ended up not only cluttering an already bloated cast of characters and taking what little time and focus that wasn't dedicated to Bloom and Sky away from the other characters, but it also made absolutely no sense for what they established for his character and why Flora liked him in the first place. In case you've never watched Winx Club or you just don't remember much of the details like I did, Helia was introduced as an ex-Red Fountain student and the nephew of Headmaster Saladin, who was the head of Red Fountain. During his time at Red Fountain, he was actually one of the best students in the entire school and the favorite of the strictest and best battle teacher. However, despite his skill as a knight, his enrollment at that school went against his personal beliefs because Helia is a pacifist. He was a gentle soul who just wanted to live in peace and be an artist. He hated violence and believed that there were better ways to resolve conflicts other than fighting, which is why he dropped out of Red Fountain and attended an art school instead. That was why Flora liked him. She liked him because he was a gentle person, he didn't like violence, and he was as in tune with nature as she was. He was mature and kind and would never hurt a fly. So then why would he suddenly just decide to re-enroll in Red Fountain when clearly it went against everything he stood for? Now you might say that it was because he wanted to be able to protect Flora, because when the Winx and Specialists were being attacked by a monster at the Red Fountain's reopening ceremony, he was the one that came to her rescue when she was about to be eaten. Or maybe he thinks he could minimize the harm being done to monsters and people by essentially supervising the group. But he's not shown to do any of that in the show, so what is the point? He just hangs around Sky's group now, I guess as a replacement of Riven because he kind of fucked off for a little bit. He's just there. They really gave him nothing to work with. So, how does this impact Flora? Well, 2 things. Point A. Helia should never have been introduced to the show in the first place because him being there and Flora being in a relationship with him adds nothing to the show and changes nothing in the story other than Flora's relationship status. The reason I think this is because Flora not having a love interest actually helps her stand out compared to the rest of the Winx and creates a nice role model for young girls to show them that they don't need to base their sense of self and identity on relationships, that it's okay to be single and you can even be happy and successful and thrive while you're single. If they had just committed to that, Flora would have been a character who was ahead of her time when most girls' media focused so heavily on crushes and relationships, and every Barbie movie ended with a wedding. And that's not to throw shade or hate to any of these media in the slightest, because I adore them as much as the other girl. But I'm just saying, it would have given her that X factor. Oh, but then it wouldn't have been popular back then. Really? Because while it was rare, there were still highly successful girls' media that didn't pair their female leads off with a long-running love interest, or focus on romance. And a prime example of this is Totally Spies, which is also coming back with a reboot in case you didn't know. Yes, there was a rotating door of guys that the girls had crushes on and would go on dates with, but none of them were ever actually locked down into long-running romantic relationships. A lot of it was just fun and frivolous. It was no big deal, just like actual dating in your teen years. And I genuinely think Totally Spies had the best portrayal of teen relationships out of all the shows I grew up with. Sam, Clover, and Alex weren't any less of a character just because they weren't dating anyone, or had romance be the center of their lives. Plus, it means the writers would actually have to focus on developing Flora as a character rather than her relationship, which is always a plus. Because Flora has her flaws as a character, which is great. It makes her believable and relatable to the audience, but they also never really treat them as flaws, and so she never has to confront or overcome it because it literally hinders nothing. And so Flora's character has been extremely stagnant from her introduction. Alternatively, point B. If Helia were to be introduced, he should not have re-enrolled in Red Fountain, and they need to actually show the progression of his relationship with Flora better. Because as it stands now, most of the progression of their relationship outside of their first meeting and confession happened in the background. And not only that, it also felt extremely one-sided on Flora's side because she was the only one making an effort to confess her feelings to him, yet outside of him drawing a picture of her when they met and writing a poem about her once, he never really seems to show the same effort back, in my opinion. Because we didn't really get to see Helia much, we don't see a lot of reciprocated pining from his side, nor do we see the things he tries to do to progress his relationship with Flora like we do with the other knights. And it just feels a bit unfair on Flora and not as fleshed out as it could have been. If you read the Winx Club wiki, it explains that Helia was also just too shy to express his feelings to Flora, but I don't think that's true at all because Helia is much more confident and self-assured than Flora is, and he does not seem bashful around her at all. This is exactly what I mean when I said that they just did not allocate the appropriate time to flesh out all the characters they had properly, because they refused to let the other characters get more screen time than Bloom and Sky. Which ironically meant that Helia and Flora's relationship was also the most successful because the writers never bothered to mess with them or write conflict for them like they do with the other couples. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Flora and Helia should have butted heads more. I think it's perfectly in character for the two most mature members of their respective groups to be able to handle conflict maturely and not escalate it to full-blown fights. However, I am saying that there's more to writing compelling relationships than just fights. Show us how well they work together, how they solve problems together, how they help each other grow, and how they change as people because of their relationship. Number 2. Season 4 should have been a Flora-centered season. Ideally, if I were a writer on Winx Club, all the other seasons past the original 3, where we mostly focused on resolving Bloom's storyline, should have been dedicated to the other members of the Winx, especially since in those later seasons, they did set the story in places with themes where it would have made more sense to have the other Winx, other than Bloom, to be the focus. For instance, Season 4, where they dealt with the Amazon fairies who mostly used plant magic, who drew their powers from a magical flower called the Heart of Amazonia, and were upset at humans for harming the environment, and where they also mentored Roxy, the Fairy of Animals. You would think, perhaps, that Flora, the Fairy of Nature, would play a bigger role than she actually did in such a storyline. But no, she's just there, getting trapped by big plants, vines, and roots alongside all the others. Wow, it sure would be convenient to be a nature fairy at that moment in time. And yeah, I know supposedly that they can't harm major fairies, which were what the Earth fairies were. So then, why even give them Believix if it's completely useless against enemies without the gifts of destiny anyway? Heck, what is even the point of the gifts of destiny? Oh, they need Lovix to survive the cold and fight Aurora, the major fairy of the north. Do y'all not have a literal fire fairy? And not just any fire fairy, the most powerful fire fairy in existence on your side? Or, you know, a nature fairy that can literally change the seasons to make it warmer for you? And as a Flora stan, Sofix is just a complete slap in the face. Because genuinely, what is the point of Sofix when Flora's entire premise and existence as a character is being in tune and harmony with nature? What, we're just giving Flora's powers to everyone now? At the very least, it's galling that Flora didn't become the most powerful Winx with Sofix, considering it's just her regular powers squared. Oh, so you're telling me Flora couldn't have saved the heart of Amazonia by herself? You need all the Winx Club members to pitch in when Flora has saved a magical flower power source by herself before? Like, just let my girl shine! Let her have her moment! Or, if you must have the other Winx members be of equal importance in helping the Amazon fairies restore their withering power source, what I would have done is pull a blue mix scenario, where Flora shares her powers to the other Winx girls in order to help them be more in tune with nature. And both Sofix and Lovix would just be one form, preferably called Florix for Flora. They didn't need to throw in the ethereal fairies or gifts of destiny. Just focus on what you have instead of constantly adding new unnecessary things. This is almost yandere dev levels of feature creep. I'm telling you, Season 4 should have been Flora's season, and we were robbed of it. Number 3. Flora Character Development Arc. As previously said, Flora is a character with flaws, and I think that's a great thing. It gives characters space to grow and improve as time goes on, so I don't know, maybe let her grow and improve? And yes, technically we see Flora gaining more self-confidence when Helia encourages her in the episode Darkness and Light, but we don't know if that is a sustained change in her character or if it was just an in-the-moment thing. Plus, I just think it would be more meaningful for Flora to find that self-confidence and overcome her insecurity within herself, rather than from the words of others, because in my opinion, unless you find it for yourself, you're just gonna keep seeking the approval of others, which is just trading one problem for another. And I do think that this self-confidence boost is momentary because we still see Flora being insecure in Season 5. 3 seasons later, when Helia's childhood friend comes back into his life and starts making her worry that he's gonna leave her for his friend, who also happens to be the princess of the world that Flora comes from. I guess what I'm saying is that it'd be really nice if Flora could get her own Monstella arc where we follow Flora as she overcomes her greatest fears and shortcomings and comes out of it a changed and stronger person. Genuinely, when I saw that they did that for Stella, I was super hopeful that they would do that for the other girls, especially Flora because she was and still is my favorite. They kind of do something similar with Aisha when they took away her sight, but as for the other characters, they didn't really have much luck. I guess you could say they also put Tekna through the same character development arc, but it happened entirely off screen, which is just devastating. But if I had to write such an arc for Flora, I honestly think Season 4 would have been perfect for the timing, setting, and premise of it, which ties back to the previous point I made. Have it so that this time, after pretty much hiding behind the shadows of the other Winx girls to step up and do the heavy lifting for their group, Flora finds herself thrust into the spotlight to face an issue that only she can solve with her abilities and skill set. She has to find confidence and strength in herself in order to provide it to their young mentee, Roxy, who is a rebellious girl with a gentle heart and love for animals as strong as hers. She has to learn to stand her ground and show her mettle to the Amazon fairies, perhaps even show them that her love and care for the environment is no less strong than theirs, and then showing her determination in helping their power source recover. And that could have been the A plot, with the Wizards of the Dark Circle being more of the B plot that the other Winx members can handle, so they still have something to do that season. And then, ideally, once Flora has won the trust of the Amazon fairies to their cause, and in training Roxy to use her powers, Flora would ideally also grow stronger as well. They can reconvene in the last few episodes towards the season finale to confront the Wizards together. And then season 4 ends with Flora becoming a stronger, more confident woman, yet still with the same compassion, kindness, and love for nature that she had before. And those are all the points I have. Let me know what you think of my design and my ideas in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out in my channel for a while. I hope your skin didn't get too pruny. Big shout out to my lovely pond dwellers on Patreon. If you want to become a pond dweller and get early access to my content, join my Patreon. If you want to see more from me, then please follow me on all my social media. If you want to submit fan art or chat with me, join my Discord server. And if you want more of my stories or my writing, check out my Wild Words series here on YouTube because that will make me really happy. All the links are in my description, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye!